If one type of element bending technique has remained mysterious in the Avatar universe, it's sandbending. The bending art only used by the Si Wong Tribes has rarely left the desert's borders. The problem is, while bending a grain of sand is child's play, controlling thousands at the same time requires a very particular set of skills. In today's Avatar video, I'll talk about sandbending, how it works, common uses, and its relationship with Jing. Now hop on your sand sailors and let's get started. In Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra, sandbenders are actually rare and scattered across the Si Wong Desert. What could be the reason behind sandbending not going mainstream? It's for sure more common than lava bending, as we record only a few earthbenders throughout the franchise that can master that power. The same thing applies for bloodbending and lightning bending, or at least it's the case during Aang's time. When you think about it, amazing earthbenders who can lift giant rocks like the Boulder or the self-proclaimed best earthbender in the world Toph Beifong were never really seen sandbending to any impressive degree. If they can control such massive elements, then logically they can bend a single grain of sand. The problem here doesn't seem to be with the material itself, but the amount of it. Earth being the element of substance, and earthbenders are known for adopting a fighting style that can be quite rigid, grounded, and focused on brute strength. Using the same technique with sand could be useful to blind one's enemy by throwing sand all over the place, but in order to really sandbend, and not just earthbend sand, a particular form of skill is required. What makes it so difficult for earthbenders to unlock the secrets behind sandbending is that the technique used to achieve such a trick lies in waterbending. I know, weird, but sandbending is only possible through a form of bending art close to how waterbenders push and pull water during battle. The sand needs to be thought of in terms of flow, and the bender needs to focus on lightness instead of heaviness. In terms of difficulty level, you can also think of sandbending by comparing it to the way Toph discovers metal bending. In order to metal bend, an earthbender has to focus on the object's inner components and locate the trace amount of earth impurities that are still part of the metal. These fragments are quite small and hard to detect, but once an earthbender can locate all of these little pieces of earth within any type of metal, besides pure ones like platinum, they can gain control over the metal through moving the earth particles within it. To understand how sandbending works, you can apply this idea, but towards thousands of tiny, free-floating, finely divided rock and mineral particles. The fact that these pieces are not held together by another material like metal makes it very, very tricky to master. This is why Toph could not defend herself against the Si Wong tribe that ended up kidnapping Appa, while Washi Tong's library was sinking into the desert sand. You have to be in a mindset to waterbend when trying to master the sub-element. Toph complained that the element of sand made her bending abilities fuzzy due to the fact that it's rather shifty. Sandbending goes against how earthbenders are traditionally trained to be immovable and direct when in combat mode. They're taught to become unshakable pillars of strength. So, there's a thing or two some earthbenders could learn from other elemental benders that could facilitate the way they handle sand. Now let's turn the concept of Jing as used in the Avatar universe to find out what makes sandbending different from other elements, but also similar to one in particular. To understand the relationship between earthbending and waterbending, we have to turn to the concept of Jing. Every elemental bending technique is linked to a positive, a negative, or a neutral Jing. In the Avatar universe, the concept helps to categorize how fighters direct their energy during battle. This energy can be channeled internally, and its expression can be seen externally through action. In the case of positive Jing, it can be described as an aggressive and forward way of directing one's energy. Firebenders, who more often than not use violent tactics during battle, are said to have a positive Jing. A firebender will rarely wait for his opponent to strike first, and through a combination of aerial kicks and punches, will shower their opponents with flames. Everything about firebending is about directing your energy ahead while minimizing defense. The only real defense firebenders have been known to practice is either evade incoming hits and, well, using full-on fire attacks on whatever element is thrown at them. Maybe besides with Uncle Iroh, the same positive Jing philosophy can be applied to most Fire Nation citizens. Zuko won't hesitate to say what he thinks, which led to his scarred face. Azula literally has no filter, and Rangi from the Kyoshi duology novels has the temperament of an erupting volcano. When it comes to negative Jing, airbenders are the ones exercising the most. It goes hand in hand with the air nomads' way, as they see every single life as precious, no matter what sin people have committed. So, compared to positive Jing practitioners like firebenders who move forward no matter what, airbenders are masters of evasion. Being quick and agile, airbenders would do anything to avoid conflict. And they often use acrobatics to trick their opponents into hitting themselves or simply falling down. Through negative Jing, the airbenders direct their energy backward and will rarely engage into battle unless absolutely necessary, as we've seen with Aang battling Ozai or Tenzin versus the Red Lotus. When it comes to earthbenders, they neither use positive nor negative Jing. They express their chi through what is called neutral Jing. According to the wacky King Boomy, this type of Jing can be summed up as doing nothing. In other words, it involves a lot of waiting, listening, and analyzing the situation. An earthbender will typically wait for their opponent to make the first move, to let them come to them. It might be one of the many reasons the Fire Nation had such a hard time taking over the Earth Kingdom. Their use of positive Jing can lead them to action, which is a good thing, but it can also mean that their impulsive personality can easily be taken advantage of by a neutral Jing practitioner. While a firebender rushes towards an earthbender, the earthbender has already evaluated the situation and can answer appropriately by either attacking or defending themselves. In the case of waterbending, they use both positive and negative Jing, which to some extent makes it so that they use a form of neutral Jing, or at least navigate somewhere between the two ends of the Jing spectrum, while balancing both positive and negative. Let's look a little bit closer at the art of waterbending to find out how surprisingly close to the waterbending technique sandbending actually is. For starters, the Si Wong Tribes are basically pirates of the desert. They mainly travel across the dunes using what they call sand sailors. These crafts are boat-like transportation devices equipped with yellow sails. While Korra used airbending to move the sand sailor Asami created out of their flying ship's wreckage, this is actually an unusual way to do so. Sandbenders would usually create whirling columns, or as I like to call them, tiny tornadoes, out of sand, which in turn generates wind. Now, in this scenario, it can be tempting to link sandbenders to airbenders, but as Korra has shown on various occasions, whirling columns of water is actually a common thing as well. Since sandbenders are still working with the element of earth, they do adhere to neutral Jing and are somehow grounded, but this aspect needs to be mostly channeled through their legs and feet. And as their connection to the earth stays strong, they have to adopt a more waterbending-based technique when it comes to moving the sand around. As I have briefly mentioned before, waterbenders, who are Tai Chi practitioners, adopt the push and pull technique. They inspire themselves from the relationship between the moon and the ocean, which create a sort of never-ending movement back and forth. This allows a waterbender to switch their defense into an attack, using their opponent's force against them and turning it to their advantage. We haven't seen a lot of sandbenders charge into battle, but their combat styles would look like something between the traditional earthbending and waterbending techniques. A hardened body and a strong core, while adopting a more fluid and light way of thinking to turn every grain of sand into a flowing entity capable of still unknown powers. Since we know that glass bending is possible thanks to the shadow of Kyoshi, it's highly probable that a highly trained sandbender like Avatar Genji from the fan project The Legend of Genji could bring glass bending to the next level. If a sandbender would accelerate and rub the sand's molecules together at high speed, it could create a form of glass. This could turn sandbending into quite a lethal weapon, and even more so in the Avatar state. Imagine a rain of shards of glass appearing out of a sandstorm, or a giant glass sword Cloud Strife style. The only issue with that type of glass is that without being mixed with soda ash, it would dissolve in water. It's kind of ironic that the technique sandbending is based on, at least partly, also comes from the bending art style most likely to defeat them. Under our Genji video, user Halo20601 liked to see Genji reconnect with his past lives with the help of Korra's spirit. This could make for quite the amazing trip to the spirit world, and like Aang did while he was healing from Azula's attack, Genji could meet with the past avatars one by one.